What you send to the AI, what you throw over the wall is not encrypted. And it's a big problem right now.
AI has become synonymous with how business is conducted. You throw it into a ChatGPT, you've just given that sensitive data away.
So the problem is when anyone uses an AI tool, they construct a prompt. What we are concerned about is the privacy of that prompt. Who sees it? What do they do with it? In a business context, trade secrets. You might be accidentally training the AI too. I did a company called Gyroscope, and I eventually sold that company to a cybersecurity firm. And then I worked on a serverless Postgres company, which I eventually sold to Databricks. The phrase that I like to say is like, you bring the AI, we bring the privacy.
Jonathan, I want to dive into confidence security, because you are now embarking on a new journey and you're building something that I'd love for our listeners, especially our founder and engineering community, to hear about. What is the problem that you're solving with confidence security?
So the problem is when you use an AI tool, and when anyone uses an AI tool, they construct a prompt. That prompt says, hey, tell me how to modify my electrical system at home, right? You construct some prompt. It gets sent off, thrown over the wall to some AI server, and the AI server processes your prompt and gives it back to you. What we are concerned about is the privacy of that prompt. Who sees it? What do they do with it? Just like when you and I might send chat back and forth, we know that's encrypted end to end. But what you send to the AI, what you throw over the wall is not encrypted. And it's a big problem right now. OpenAI is being sued by the New York Times and has been forced to retain deleted and temporary messages. That's a huge privacy problem. There have been multiple breaches and will continue to be breaches. And of course, we've had breaches in the past and we're going to continue to have breaches, but the level of data that we're giving, the sensitivity of the data that we're giving to these AIs is pretty unbelievable. In a business context, trade secrets. You're asking some AI to review all of the PDFs at your company and tell you how to do this trade secret thing. You might be accidentally training the AI too. So it's very important that your prompt data is private.
When I think about what you've just said there, you're absolutely right. AI has become synonymous with how business is conducted. And perhaps for many companies, they use AI to, for example, like a ChatGPT or a Grok, they use those platforms to share sensitive data, perhaps even sensitive documents, legal documents. And it's great in many ways because you'd receive a document from another party that you're looking to conduct business with. It has 30, 40, 50 different pages. You send it to a lawyer, you're probably going to end up spending quite a bit in legal fees. You throw it into a ChatGPT and you ask it to pick up on key areas that could be of a concern, and it does that very, very quickly for you. But to your point, you've just given that sensitive data away. And as you said, the LLM could be training on those very important sensitive data. How do you protect against that? How do you protect your customers at Confidence Security from the data that's being passed on?
So we have a technology that's modeled after something Apple did last year. Apple built this thing called private cloud compute. Our technology essentially makes the equivalent of end-to-end encrypted to the AI itself. So it goes to the AI, only the AI can see your data and run its algorithm, and then it goes end-to-end encrypted back to you, and then the AI throws it out. And there's a way to guarantee cryptographically that the AI isn't doing anything nefarious, like training on your data or logging it or giving someone internally or externally access to it or selling it, whatever it might be. So it's a cryptographic approach to making those guarantees.
So you're saying Apple has built something called private cloud compute, and how does it work?
It's what backs Apple Intelligence. So when you're on your phone and you've asked it to rewrite this sentence or to check out this image, it sends your data to Apple's servers. But Apple has done so in a way that makes it so that Apple cannot even see your data.
And that's guaranteed.
That's guaranteed. It's a cryptographic guarantee.
Right.
And so we said, wow, this is amazing. This is 10x better than anything else anyone had ever done. We're going to build the same system for everyone else, because Apple doesn't obviously make it available for everyone.
Right. Because it's proprietary for Apple users.
Yep.
But so Apple doesn't see the data. So how is Apple training its AI?
They're not training it on your data. Now, that's a little bit subtle. They do some on-phone work around this concept called differential privacy, where they give out anonymized versions of some of your data. I'm not sure the details about how they're training the models, their
Sure.
models internally, but they're certainly not taking your emails or your photos, sending them to servers and then training on them. They make a real guarantee that they're not doing that.
Right. What are the risks that if it was discovered later on down the line that they were taking that data and training?
There's certainly a possibility, but what's very unique about this, the way that they did it and the way that we do it, is the server code that is running is published publicly. And auditors, security experts can look at it and verify its behavior. And that's something that's completely new. Most people wouldn't have a way to verify what's happening in the black box of the server.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so there's always coding mistakes, like there's always bugs, there's always security vulnerabilities, but I don't think they're intentionally doing it. And they went through great lengths to make it very difficult even for mistakes to happen.
So let's go back to confidence security. What is it that confidence security is doing, whether it mirrors or kind of plays off what Apple have done? How does that work?
At the end of the day, we offer the same API as OpenAI does. It's the chat completions API. And
Right.
that's what all of the inference providers offer. But what happens, 3 special things happen to access us. The first thing is that all traffic that gets sent to our inference endpoint is anonymized. We do not know where it comes from. And that's really important because then we can never be like, oh, I want to go look at Firas's data, because we have no way of knowing whose data came in for us. So that gets anonymized. It's a technique called oblivious HTTP, and we do that in collaboration with Cloudflare and Fastly and a couple others. And they essentially strip identifying information in the metadata. The second step we do is something called remote attestation. And remote attestation is where before you send a server data, you ask the server, what code are you running? And the server says, oh, here's the code that I'm running. And then you, in the third step, get to decide whether to trust that code or not. And if you trust it, then your computer running our SDK or your iPhone or whatever encrypts the data in such a way that only a server running that code can decrypt it. And then how do you trust the data? Well, then you have a bunch of security researchers who are in the background verifying the code and deciding whether to trust it or not. So that's like kind of the 3 steps. Anonymize it, ask what code is running, and if you trust it, encrypt it and send it to the server.
And Jonathan, for what you're building at confidence security, you don't need to train on anything, right?
That's right.
So unlike a Apple or OpenAI or other companies, your business function or what your business is built on in terms of how you generate revenue and how you build your company doesn't require that particular piece in terms of bringing the data in so we can train on that data.
That's right. Our incentive is solely to essentially sell the compute necessary for inference privately and then sell the technology for doing it privately. And for our customers, we have a managed version where you can use our API endpoints, or you can just license our software and run it on your compute. The phrase that I like to say is like, you bring the AI, we bring the privacy. That's what we're selling. We don't want to sell anything other than privacy so that we keep the incentives aligned.
Let's dive into a topic that I really wanted to discuss with you on this episode. The founder mindset. You've been an entrepreneur for a while. You've built companies, you've built products, you've been through that cycle a number of times. And here you are today building a confidence security. You have these different products that you're building within the security space. Where does that mindset come from? Where does that grit come from?
Yeah, the grit is an interesting question. The mindset, I think it's like relatively simple. I'd like to build something that brings value to other people and be very impactful. Ever since I was a kid, I was a computer nerd. When I was 14, I went to the coffee shop in my local neighborhood and I had a printout of computer services and I put it up on the cork board for the local community, and it had little tearaway sheets that you could call me if you needed computer help. I didn't make that much money, but I did help a lot of people with their computers. And so I think that spirit has just been there since then. I'm a very independent person. The other appeal of a business is you're supporting yourself, and that is a nice thing to be in my mind. Where that came from my childhood, I don't quite know, but it's always been there. And then I did 2 startups before this one. I did a company called Gyroscope, which was a reinforcement learning startup in 2016 before it was cool. And I eventually sold that company to a cybersecurity firm. And then I worked on a serverless Postgres company, which I eventually sold to Databricks. And actually, the talking to customers and the ordering, we ended up doing it differently for each company. I think it really depends on how you do that and when you do that, depending on your market. I like the realness of it, and I like learning something new, and I like doing things the hard way. It's kind of satisfying.
With your background, and as you said, you've been through a few startups, did you find that you lived the problem yourself as a user and decided that you need to solve that problem? Did you find yourself working at a company where you went through the cycles of experiencing the problem and realizing I need to solve this problem? Is that one example? Another example being, I just want to be an entrepreneur. I want to build something. Let me go and figure it out.
Confidence Security, our private inference product, that came out of industry experience, seeing how much effort folks are putting into self-host GPUs and run GPUs. And so that was all about just observing a lot of others experience it. The company before that, Bit.io, a serverless Postgres company, I had experienced that personally as well. I'm a data scientist. I have been doing data science for 10 or 15 years, and it was just a problem that was recurring. And at some point I was like, I'm going to stop doing this. I'm rebuilding this at every company I've been in. I'm going to build it one last time and sell it rather than have to keep rebuilding it. It was kind of in terms of frustration that just borne out into a company.
Jonathan, I'm wondering, with all the experience you've had as a founder, what lessons would you say you've taken from those failures that you've had and you've applied them further down the line in your career? You can look back at those failures as great lessons of how you paved the way forward.
I actually kind of keep a little note sheet where I write down just nuggets that I'm thinking, oh, I want to keep this around. So maybe I can read a couple for you real quickly. Here's a fun one. You're in the business your customers think you are in, and not the business you think you're in.
Right. That's interesting. So messaging is very important. Storytelling becomes important. How you tell the story about the product you're building.
And if they say, for example, at Bit.io, well, we didn't start as a serverless Postgres company. We actually started as a data sharing product. And all of our customers came and were like, we want serverless Postgres. You guys are selling serverless Postgres. And we were like, no. Postgres is just an implementation detail. We're like a data sharing company. So our customers told us what product we were selling and what industry we were in. And if we kept crafting the story around data sharing, we were not capturing anyone. We were actually capturing a whole different segment of people. And so you can only sway your customer so much. Like, you have this distribution channel, you have this marketing channel, and your customers think a certain way about your product. And you want to understand what that is just as much as you want to skate to where the puck is going.
Makes sense. I mean, it goes back to the whole design partner journey. You have these design partners to help you figure out what product you need to build, what features you need for that particular product. Do you have another one?
The trade-off between the level of innovation, the difficulty of selling the product, and the price of the product. What I mean by that is, like, if I invent a teleporter, it sells itself and I can charge a lot for it. Right? But if I'm selling HR operations software and I'm selling it for $1, I can probably do a pretty easy job selling it. But if I need to make a sustainable business and I want to charge like $100 per seat for this HR software, I'm probably gonna have to spend a lot of marketing money on it. Sure. And so these kind of trade-offs I think about a lot, and where you're choosing the difficulty of your business.
I love it. I'd like to touch on one last topic. We spoke about a few things today, and one thing that keeps playing in my mind as we have been talking today is the importance of security today more than ever before. AI it's an incredible piece of technology. It does really cool stuff and you could do a lot of things with it, but it does open a completely new market or a new opportunity for adversaries to come in and cause far more harm than they've ever caused before. How do you feel about all of this new technology? I mean, and I want to unpack it not from a founder perspective or a technology Silicon Valley perspective, more from a consumer perspective outside the enterprise, especially for perhaps the elderly or individuals that maybe don't have the same level of nuanced experience to understand this technology. Things are far more terrifying than they've ever been because of how disruptive this technology can be and how it could mimic your behavior. It could pretend to be you. Sometimes I even wonder, and just for full transparency, I have seen it happen where I'm communicating with a friend on a WhatsApp and I can just tell they have used a ChatGPT to screenshot the conversation and come back with a response. We are entering this world where, are we actually talking to humans? or are we talking to an AI? How do you feel as a consumer about the risks that AI has from a security standpoint?
Yeah, I think certainly like I know too much, so to speak. Yeah, I'm worried about authenticity. I'm worried that my grandmother could get a call from someone who sounds like me and isn't me. They
Mm.
could take the audio from this recording and use it to create a voice model that essentially sounds like me. Yeah, I think that deepfakes is a real problem. I think that the AI slop, so to speak, is going to be a problem. There's something in humans that we like authenticity, right? We still appreciate really good woodworking, but we have really advanced tools now to build houses. I don't know what that exact analogy is going to be with AI, but I think it's going to be there. I think we have to be very vigilant. And I think that I trust the like iPhones and mobile devices more so than I trust like the computers. But it's going to be a really weird world in the next year or two. There's the deepfake stuff. There's the prompt injection stuff. For the consumers, I really recommend against the agentic browsing stuff. I think prompt injection is super dangerous right now. And I don't think that the juice is worth the squeeze, so to speak, or the risk is worth it for AI browsers yet. I would not trust your AI browsers, operate all your different tabs. I think that's going to be a big learning, which is like, how are we dealing with prompt injection? We're generating all of this like AI code, AI generated code, and that is going to have a lot of security vulnerabilities in it. And we're going to have to tackle that. And so I'm just very cautious about essentially AI generated material.
It's almost as if being sloppy is desired now. You receive emails and everything just seemed too perfect, too organized, and very quick. I had a call with a service provider recently, and they sent me their proposal within minutes after the call. It was amazing. It was so structured, very detailed, and I just knew straight away AI. And to your point, the product that you're building, somebody was recording my conversation and transcribed the whole thing and turned it into a proposal. So there's that. But I also think about the impact of overuse of AI, especially in schools, that could have a serious impact on our cognitive function. And I just worry, how long is this going to take until atrophy kicks in and our cognitive abilities, at least for the people that are using it, begin to decline?
I think it's going to be pretty quick. GPS is maybe an interesting one. Apple Maps or Google Maps or whatever. You used to have to like navigate your city without directions on your phone. And now you get into an Uber and they spend like half the time just looking at the map instead of the road. They absolutely don't know the eccentricities of your city. I think calculators come up a lot. I think calculators are a little bit different, but there's kind of interesting, right? We all pretty much use calculators now. I can do long division if I need to. I remember it, but I haven't had to do it since I was in school. It's valuable that I learned how to do it. We're going to have to really figure out which of the things that we really need to learn and which of the things are essentially a reference problem. I used to say, I can always go look that up in a book. I don't need to memorize Euler's constant. I guess I kind of know pi, but it's like, it's a reference problem. And so like maybe the window's going to shift on that. There's going to be certain things where we're like, great, we didn't really need to know that, have the intuition for this, but then there's still going to be certain things that we need to know how to do.
Jonathan, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show today. I want to wrap up with one last thing we always like to do on every one of these episodes, and it's to ask our guest a question around a book recommendation.
So the one that comes to mind is called Skunk Works by Ben Rich. It's the story of Lockheed Martin through essentially the Cold War and some of the incredible engineering that they did, creating the U-2, the SR-71, and I think the F-117A. All of them incredible machines, but the engineering that they did and the mindset that they had, I think amazing for a startup, amazing for deep technology, and I think it's also an incredible read. They talk about numbers that like seem incoherent to us even today. Like the gallons per second of fuel consumed by an SR-71 is like incomprehensible. It's flying like Mach 3. Like we still don't do that. And that book, I think, is just a great mentality for how you do engineering. They built the SR-71 with like 12 people around a table drawing on it because they didn't have computers then. And they still somehow made probably the fastest plane in history. And there's so much intuition that they had, speaking of AI taking away our intuitions and atrophying. But it's also just a super fun read. So that's my recommendation.
Jonathan, what are your key takeaways from that book?
That you have to iterate quickly and that there are no rules. The 12th version of the SR-71 is the version that flew, and they had It's called the A12. And because it was the 12th time, they all got into a table and drew it all out. And that's iteration is just so important. Getting feedback quickly. It's all of the standard startup stuff, but in a context of even when you're building the fastest plane in the world, you can iterate quickly.
Our business, Harris & Clark, is a recruitment firm. And one thing that we have taken from that world of iteration and product development or working with design partners in the product world is iterating really early in the process. So finding an opportunity to spend enough time with the key stakeholders to share some ideas and some profiles, but to find that opportunity to iterate as fast as possible. Iteration has been a big winner for us, but it applies in everything, right? It's not just in the business world, it's in every aspect of life, is that constant learning quickly, making mistakes, learning again until you get to where you need to be.
Totally. How else can you learn about the market unless you ask it for feedback?
Jonathan, it has been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate you making the time today, and I wish you all the success, and hopefully we'll find some time in the future, perhaps in 6 months or 12 months, to do an in-person recording to see where you are at that particular point with confidence, security, and how the company has progressed.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Inside the Silicon Mind. This podcast is powered by Harris & Clark. For more episodes, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. As always, stay curious, stay consistent, and stay inside the Silicon Mind.